Mark and Tim. Still talking about starting a podcast.
I don't believe it. You know what, Mark?
What, Tim?
You're just listening? Is that all you're doing?
I'm listening to music.
You know what I forgot to do?
You forgot to record. Right?
I forgot to hit record.
Well, I'm recording myself.
On my own thing. So we'll have your audio. I don't know that we'll have my audio, but we'll have audio. And
that would be a very interesting podcast, where it's like you just do just one of our tracks,
just
and then
side.
I'll be saying something and a good long break while you're going on your monologue to talk about stuff and to reply, and then I'll just reply, and then nobody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like the transcribed stuff that we do. This is the most unprepared I think I've ever been.
Come on, Tim.
Just to be honest, because
at least I start thinking.
I've thrown my entire list away.
At least I start thinking about the show an hour before.
Yeah. This is I was gonna say, based on how we figured this out, this is the least prepared I've been. So it's probably going to be the best show that we've done.
That's true.
Or not.
Every show, every next show is the best show ever.
Show.
That's my. So next week's show is going to be way better than this one.
Better than this one, of course. This one's going to be better than last week's show.
That's right.
Oh, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do next week's show.
Oh, I was thinking about this week
with
schedules. With podcasts and scheduling and like consistency.
Right.
And we've been pretty We've been pretty consistent with this, and so you're gonna break that. Straight. You're gonna break that streak of
maybe
6 in a row.
I'm gonna be out of state.
Okay, what are you doing?
We're going to Kentucky. My oldest is participating in the National Bible Bee.
Oh,
so she'll be there, and I have absolutely no idea what the schedule of all that is. So I'm not sure what I'll be doing on Friday at 1 Eastern.
We could even do something.
Shift some things.
We could, the live part might not be able to live, but we could still do something based on your schedule.
Yeah, I figure we'll make space. It just may not be normal.
And still release a podcast that week.
Yeah, I just don't think it'll be our normal 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
we'll have to see how that works. And well, since I forgot to hit record on this one, maybe the audio quality will be better than this week, but it's probably not going to be as good as it normally is because I won't have all this fancy stuff. But
well, that's fine. Well, as long as, like I said, I was actually thinking about that with podcasts, and because you made a comment about how this is the most consistent thing we've done ever. Last week, and I was like, yeah, that's actually true. And then think about if we want to do this as a podcast and keep it running and try to build an audience, with podcasts, you got to release it every week, or at least whatever schedule that you're going to adopt. If that's going to be, weekly, bi-weekly, even once a month, just kind of sticking to that is a big thing, because people start becoming dependent upon it.
You can take a break occasionally, but it's like one of those things just to have that pattern that people can expect that content from you.
Because this is great content.
It is.
I listened to this podcast back by probably about 3 times during the week.
That explains all 3 clicks. That's where they're coming from.
Hey, my sisters are listening to this.
Really?
I have 2 sisters, and both of them said they're listening on their podcast players. So getting it from the index or from iTunes there.
Nice. Yeah. So how close are we to having chapter support?
Close. I said,
I could do nothing with that. Because everything was configuration driven, and I was completely confused.
Don't worry. This week I did take a look at the audio. I haven't been able to push it yet. So I want to get doing the audio tags real simple, right? I could throw up a quick little audio tag there. The audio HTML
in the player.
Just to connect it to the MP3 file. It would be totally easy to do. You know me, but I gotta make it look good. At least I want to just customize a little bit. So I was looking at this week, and I'm going to continue working on it this weekend. Then I agree. Chapters is the next thing, because I've been using different podcast apps, testing them out. And I was remember I mentioned how we have a huge chapter list.
We have a lot of chapters. So many chapters. In fact, wait a second, Mark. Here's a chapter right here. Okay, go ahead.
And then I was comparing that to the other chapters I see on the other podcasts. And there's a ton of chapters. This is the thing. This is the thing. Like every 2 to 3 minutes, there's a new chapter, and there's the longer your podcast is, that longer that is.
To me, I don't know. This makes. And again, I think I've mentioned this in past. We haven't really talked about it a lot, but I'm not an avid podcast listener. For some reason, I can find the content engaging, but being able to to actually listen to it and consume it at any type of regular interval, I find difficult. I think it's because I've never had an app that I really thought worked well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can talk about that.
I'm actually liking Podverse.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the thing that makes chapters useful is because we talk about a bunch of different crazy random stuff, right? Like that's the feel of this podcast. That might not be the feel of every podcast, but more than likely in any podcast, there's going to be points where they're like, well, this is a good place to reference, whether it's a topic change or whether, here we talked about this specific example, or this was a funny part. And then when you're trying to share it with other people, I mean, saying, hey, here, listen to two developers just talk to each other about what they're building, what they're doing in life at the end of a week, and your entry into that is an hour-long commitment. That's maybe a little bit to ask, but that you could say, hey, check out this little section right here where they talked about some random topic that is somewhat related to something that we're talking about, that's a lot easier. So the chapters make that easy, and people don't have to go and find it in the podcast, because it should be pretty easy for them to find, that's when they were talking about whatever it was. So yeah, I think to me, the chapters seem like a great addition to, because I know all the podcast 2.0 stuff is built on RSS. So yeah, great addition to RSS.
And what I ran into this week when I was testing different apps, because I wasn't never really used chapters that much before I even referenced them. And based on our discussion last week, I was like, let me just check to see what other podcasts are doing with it. And I was pretty impressed with, how many they have. And then also with podcast 2.0, how you can attach an image to that. So each chapter could have an image. Yeah. I think that would be really cool for the website, so that when somebody, doesn't just goes chapter by chapter, an image that represents what we're talking about will get displayed on the site or in the application.
Speaking of that, the other day I was, I forget what brought it, across my path, but I don't know what library it was, or maybe it was an API or something like that. But the whole, you share an article, and the socials look for some image, right? And there's image tags. I forget what the tag is, right? But it's some tag that'll show, hey, this is what you should render on the page as a snippet of this article, right? It's what Twitter uses, what Facebook uses as soon as you drop it in. I mean, they'll look for something on the page if you don't provide it. But they were going through the methods to not just take, your standard stock photography image that kind of relates to your topic and, look, it's there, but then also take the title of the page and overlay that over the image, and then render an image that has that on it. So you're like sharing this article, and then the image that shows in whatever your feed is the article title, is the author, is some related content, makes sense. And the process between kind of or automating that. So,
because both of us are all about the automation, because we're not about doing any more work than we have to after this podcast is recorded.
That's I mean, that goes without saying, but because it needs to be an image, right? Yeah. It needs to be an image. So there's some tools that would reduce it down to kind of have that title, have that context, have your branding on it, and you wouldn't even have to worry about it. It's just like, this is the related image. And I know all the rest of this information is going to be merged into and built, in this kind of shareable snippet image. And that for the chapters seems useful, right? Like if it was not just an image that's related, but kind of a related image plus the text of whatever the chapter title is, just so people know where they're at.
That would be really interesting to do, to write a script that would take our chapter list, and then for each chapter, just, because a chapter list, or the name of each chapter is pretty short. It's like 3 to 5 sentences, or 3 to 5 words at most. And then just do a little script to kind of then do an image search based on that, and see what image comes back. And if it actually does return a good image, that would be a real good automatic process, just to attach that image to that chapter.
Point it to one of the big, like royalty-free CC attribute or whatever.
I think it was even the National Archives talked about how they're trying to bring together all of their image libraries and then make, and it is available publicly already, but I think they have a lot of different repositories, different images, and they're trying to make it in one central repository so that everyone could access it. It's for free.
That'd be really cool.
So, but think about the podcast apps, going back to that, because what I was using chapters for was because I like to, listen on my phone. And then if I come back to my computer, just open up a browser and then open it. So I did like Podverse, how it has a really slick app. I liked it. Performance, it was a little, it kind of crashed on me a few times. I'm not sure if that's an Android specific thing or it just froze. It didn't really do anything. So it didn't get any feedback. That was kind of annoying. And then when I use this web interface is also from a design point of view is in parallel to the native app, which I really, really like. And I think it has really
the same
slick
feel.
Yeah, it has a slick. And I saw you used it for once when you referenced a chapter from, I think it was the PHP Ugly podcast. Where
I didn't reference a chapter. I referenced a clip because Podverse lets you make.
Or you made a clip.
I made a clip.
Yeah.
And then I referenced that for exactly that purpose. Right? It's like, it's nice to be like, hey, just drop it. I don't have to be like, he says it about 3 minutes in. It's like, no, I can just clip it, and it made it really nice and shareable.
The one thing I didn't like about going between like the native application and going to the web, it didn't keep track of where I ended the audio. So I used chapters to kind of figure out, where I listen to, and then kind of manually do that. Because that's one thing going between the different applications, the syncing of where you left off in the audio. So you can go between like web and native is it's not there yet.
I thought on mine it did, because
maybe it was just a weird Android bug or something like that happened to me. I don't know. I
think really once I got it synced right, in that I kind of like logged in here, logged in there. It got confused with my login, but once both devices had the same login and I had kind of listened with both of them, I thought it picked up and synced pretty good. I may be wrong though.
Well, anyway. But chapter's coming soon. That is on the list, because that's part to do this podcast, right? I wanted to learn about it, right? Yeah. As part of like a development process, and start thinking about how we can
2.0, right?
Yeah, because it's really exciting. I think, and it is kind of where they're going with it. You know, it is focused on podcasts, but I think there's a lot of other avenues with like either with like music for like musicians who want to like eventually like release like their, you know, they could do like apply the same technology to, and also the funding model, the funding model behind this is also kind of interesting with having the
value for value, which says you listen, you pay, basically
the stats. Which have you tried out the Breez app?
I have not.
You should try that just as an experiment to see what it looks like. It's a really slick application, and from a podcast standpoint, it's been super performative. It hasn't crashed at all. But it's basically
that a podcast app.
It actually is a cryptocurrency application.
Okay.
And so it acts as a crypto wallet, and then also it added in this podcast feature because of Podcast 2.0 and adding in the funding model behind that. So you could stream stats. Either you could set, you know, per minute, you could stream a number of crypto stats, which is like little bits of Bitcoin. You know, for each minute that you're listening to, or you could just do like a boost, which gives like a donation to that podcast for like a one-time donation. But how they have it integrated in the interface is really, really interesting and really slick. But it's actually, like I said, it's a crypto application, crypto wallet, but they added in podcasting into it.
That is not the thing I found.
No, things like BREEZE or something like that. I don't know. I'll send you a link later.
Breez rated most user-friendly church management software by Capterra.
Hey, that sounds up your alley too.
I'm like, I don't think that's what he's talking about. Can't remember the last time someone was like, have you tithed on your Bitcoin? But anyway.
Yeah, there actually is. If you do a search for Breez online, it does come up with a bunch of different types of applications that range from church management software to patient intake software to Breez Airways if you want to schedule a flight.
It's a Breez. I mean, everybody wants to be able to say that about their product.
That's true. Here, type in Breez.
How hard is it to use your product? Oh, no, it's a Breez. But what you're saying now, if I understand this correctly, is the next chapter in this podcast.
It's okay. It's BREEZ without the last E. So it's like Breez.
Just ends in Z.
And they don't have a very friendly. Well, I guess the first part of the domain name is friendly. It's breez.technology. You have to type out technology.
Technology.
I know. That's a lot. I know.
Speaking of domains, I don't know. I was playing around with my router yesterday. Yesterday, I think. Yeah. I have it set up to do DNS forwarding now, so I can get to the hosts easily behind my router. Like if I want to go to, so I have a network. I have a Synology NAS, right? And the name of that, because I give it static DHCP, right? The name is NAS, right? So if I now go to nas.timlytle.home from behind my network.
Oh, from your network. As long as you're not making that public.
No. But that's the thing. I configured my router to then I forget what it's DNS mask, but it's to forward anything it doesn't know about to other name servers, but handle local name servers. Yeah. So that all came about because I'll be gone next week. So I finally got OpenVPN running on my NAS. And so now I can easily connect back and appear like I'm on the local network because my development machine is a desktop. sits on my
when
desk,
you turn on your VPN application remotely, then, and then it basically will give you an IP similar to how you would be locally on your home computer, or can you just access all the internal IPs in your home network?
You get a different IP address because
it's just a general VPN address.
But when it publishes that it is the gateway for my home's IP subnet, right? Mm-hmm. So if I go to 192, whatever my IPs are, I'll end up being directed to whatever's local. So it has access to everything that is local. And the usefulness for that is because my dev system is a Linux box that doesn't move because it's a desktop, right?
Yeah.
I can connect remotely. And I used to do like VNC, but instead of that, JetBrains has something they call Projector, where you can connect to a running IDE instance on another computer, and it projects the UI to yours.
Is the performance pretty good? That is a nice feature.
It's okay, because like I've tried VNC, I've tried using a bunch of fun stuff to do like an X server on my Windows box. Mm-hmm. So I was forwarding the actual UI through X, and that didn't work too great. But yeah. So
sounds good.
It's going to be an interesting test.
So what's to see how that runs? You'll be away the whole week in Kentucky?
I will be away the whole week.
So you'll be working remotely the whole week?
Well, I don't know how remotely I'll be working.
Yeah, because that's always a challenge,
at least, right?
Because you're not going off by yourself. You're going with your family, so it's always a hard time kind of balancing your time with your family, and then kind of if you have to do any client work or any projects, kind of keep them pushed along. It's always a challenging thing to do.
As a contractor, that's always the case, right? Like, the joke was, I think I billed some time the day I got married. I think. Ooh. I don't know that
you got to do like a push right before you said your vows.
But we were up in New York.
Did it commit some code?
I think I handled a couple of things the day I got married. It may not have been. It may have been the day before. But I was doing stuff. I was that's what the life of a contractor, right?
I know.
Nobody that's the thing though with the contract relationships. There's not when you're working for a bunch of clients, mm-hmm. and it's a little different now that I have pretty much a large contract with a significant client, and there you're like, hey, I'm going to be gone. For a week.
So that's what I was wondering, because I was
little clients. It's like you don't tell everybody you're going to be gone because that's just not that relationship, Do
you have do you do anything with contracts or SLAs with your clients? Like saying you are available for this amount of time per month or on,
that's a really interesting question. No, not really. I mean, I have a set, sometimes it's like either I'm billing hourly, mm-hmm. or I'm having a set amount of time that I'm expected, to work or something like that. But any type of availability gets really interesting in the US because the IRS doesn't like that. The IRS as a contractor wants you to be setting your own hours, working with your own equipment, doing your own thing. Otherwise, they're like, hey, you're acting like a contractor. You're calling yourself a contractor, but you're acting like an employee.
What do you mean by setting your own hours with the IRS? What does that mean?
Well, the IRS has a list of 11 things the 11 factors that they consider when, seeing whether or not you are a actual contractor. And because what they want to avoid is they want to avoid people that are paid as contractors but are treated as employees.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because the relationship with companies, mm-hmm. withholding, things like that, different tax advantages or disadvantage, however it works.
Are you just doing that
one
because
of those things is setting your own hours?
Is that because you're a sole proprietor? Is that how you're running it?
I guess as a contractor, yeah, I'm a sole.
Okay.
I'm a single owner LLC, whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I mean. That's what I've always done when I've done, a lot mm-hmm. of consulting in the past through an LLC. And usually I just accounted for the revenue or the money coming in, expenses, and your audio just went someplace. I don't know. You unplugged yourself, Tim.
No, I didn't. I was muting because I have someone who's trying to practice their piano in this same room.
Okay. Well, maybe we gotta. It's a scheduling issue, man. We gotta schedule around this.
Yeah, it's I know we had this room booked. This isn't your room, but no. Now that you've completely distracted me, and
I don't even know what I know. You got distracted me because I was like, you went off. I was talking. I could see you talking on the video, and then you just totally went.
Yeah, that's because I
went nowhere. So.
So it looks like she found a different set of headphones. So what were you saying? Something about
no, because like when I have done, and I haven't done like the past few years. I haven't done too much client work where I've had a build that I've done. We definitely with my wife's publishing business where she sells and publishes books, and we count for that income. And then also if I sold stuff online, just from had like a small little retail business I was kind of just doing, I would account for that income, and then I would just do work focused on income and expenses. But like thinking about back when I was doing consulting work, either if it was a project I was just getting either lump sum payments, or if I was billing hourly through it, I was basically just treated as income, like through the business. But then but when you're filling out your forms, you're specifying like that you are an per hourly contract worker, and that's how you're.
No. It's not. It's not like it's reported to the IRS. When the IRS comes to a company, not me, to a company, and starts considering whether or not they are having contractors that they think are employees, that's just a list of things that they start considering.
Oh,
like if you're a company that says, no, we're all contractors, but you are telling your contractors you need to be available from 9 to 5 every day, and you need to work at this office, and here is the computer you're going to work on, the IRS starts to say those are not contractors.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But it doesn't usually. Well, I don't know, because I've never been in it. I've actually always been a legit contractor, right? I've never been in that situation to know what then happens. But I think the IRS's concern falls far more in the employer, in the company's, side than the contractor side. But it
actually brings up an interesting thing that I saw a little bit, but I've mostly just heard about it, where like the relationships between companies and consultants or contractors and full-time employees, how like it's so lopsided for full-time employees, just from how they treat the employees or treat the contractors. Where
it depends on the company.
I know it depends on the company. It's case by case basis. But I was just curious about either from the companies you've worked for or the other contractors or consultants that you've worked with. Have you gotten that impression where like just being a contractor, like a part-time or just a side employee, even though you're maybe full-time within that company for let's say 3 or 6 months or longer, but then just the experience of that? Because mostly I've been full-time from my experience, mostly been kind of a full-time employee, and then did a little bit of consulting kind of in between jobs and contracting kind of, and also when I was trying to do my own consulting business for a couple of years. But for majority, I've just worked for companies. And I saw that a little bit when consultants would come in, but I was just kind of curious about your experience with that.
Well, so before I talk to my experience, what was it that you were seeing or even reading? Like the idea that it's better,
just from like
treats a full-time employee better than a contractor?
Well, both from pay. Well, I know you have the whole pay benefits, issue where the contractors aren't going to get the full benefits or even any benefits at all, but also just from the type of work that's being assigned. So more, let's say, the grunt work or more of the more kind of the work that the full-time employees wouldn't want to do, and they just want to hand off to a contractor. They would get more of those types of projects.
I've never seen that myself. I can see that, and I know you're laughing because you know what I just did. So Mark's laughing because he knows I haven't finished my lunch. So I just
he totally just turned off the video, so I can't see. Okay,
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I pushed the video off to the side. I can definitely see that being a thing. That's never been the experience in anybody that I've worked for, because a lot of times I'm not the contractor versus other employees. Like when I was doing more work through oDesk and things like that. And I know you can hear the other child practicing the piano, I'm sure, in the background. So
it's good. It's good background music, right? Yeah.
I was like, this is different. They have now a track behind this podcast.
It's sort of like we're in a cafe or just in a coffee shop, just having this casual chat together.
Right.
Which is my idea about the show, right? Just meeting with you once a week, sort of like at a coffee shop. Yeah, there it goes.
Maybe I should bring up some like just turn it down and we'll just have it playing in the background like we're at a Starbucks. So no, when I was doing, or what do I want to say, handling a greater amount of clients simultaneously. There was times when I think might have billed work for 8 or 10 different clients in a week, and that's a lot to handle. And that's when I was when I was really leaning on services like oDesk to handle all the management for it. And now they have their timers going off. This is the most. This is super professional.
I expect all this to be edited out. This is on YouTube,
none of this is going to be edited out because we don't edit. That's too much. I have no idea why they're even setting the timer. What is the timer for? It's just Lots of beeping. Anyway.
But yeah, when I was doing, I could probably do 2 or 3 clients at once. And hearing you do, because you were mostly doing through oDesk at the time. I know that oDesk provides that.
I was leaning heavy on that because I would just be like, clock in, clock out. I don't worry about billing. It bills automatically.
And then they take like 20% of your, what?
It wasn't
like
20%. It was
18, 20%, something like that.
It was 10.
Was it 10? Oh man.
Yeah, it was 10.
That's maybe because you started from the very beginning with them or something. I remember when I was looking, it was more than 10.
Well,
it was like it was getting close to 20. It was like between 15 and 20. It was inching the way up there.
Was that after it was bought by eLance? And then
you might have been, because you may have been like legacy, how you were like one of the first contractors in the system, and then you got to get the sweet rate. And then for newer contractors, got a higher rate that they were deducting.
Well, I know that once it got bought by Upwork, things changed. Lots of things changed. Like they adopted that whole eBay model where it's like, hey, if you want your profile to have a star next to it, be bolded, you can pay us. And I hated that because like the thing that was beautiful about oDesk's model to begin with was we only make money when you make money. Mm-hmm. There's no fee to join. There's nothing like that. If you're making money, then we're making money. So we are motivated to get you to make more money because that is the only way we make more money.
Yeah, my experience actually was on the other side with eLance. So
right,
I mostly did
terrible.
I mostly did most of my work through eLance. That was my first experience, and then eLance bought oDesk.
They merged and they became Upwork, but they then adopted a lot of those practices where you want your profile to be bolded or to be a premier profile. You can pay us for that, and I hated that because you're charging people for advertising when really the service you're providing is, at least the value I always got from the service was making the billing easy.
Okay, so this brings a great question that comes up with my students, because my second year students are looking to get work and go out in the workforce, and they ask me, it's like, are these sites good? Should they get into them? So if you were talking to somebody who's thinking about using the service, let's say they're the entry level, maybe have a little bit of experience, maybe on a couple projects, but not too much experience at all. Like, what would be your advice, or to start working in Upwork, and how to approach it, because it is a crowded market now.
I mean, it was a crowded market then too. There was a lot of people bidding for jobs. I would routinely be on bidding for a job that had a lot of other people bidding for it, and when wow.
Because my advice usually is to students, like, in the beginning, especially when you're building your portfolio and or your resume and work experience, any work is good work, right? So it's work that you can show, it's work that you can either talk about, right, into a future client or future job application. But you do have to walk that line with, like, it is a little bit dicey sometimes when you go into these sites that are like Upwork, that how they're going to treat you, or how they're going to highlight you, or not so much where, how do you market yourself to try to get those projects, especially when you go into these projects where you see you have 20 to 40 applications, and it takes a good amount of time to submit an application for a project to get started. Right. And it's just it's a lot of work that you have to do just to get your feet moving in that system.
Yeah. I mean, so a couple of things there. I'll plug this too, because it's been a long time since I've really been actively trying to get those kind of smaller jobs, because that's what you find on a lot of those sites. They're smaller one-off jobs. They're going to take you a week or a couple months, or even a day sometimes to turn something around. So it's been a long time since I've done that, and I do have some advice out. Did you know there's a freelancing stack exchange?
I've taken a look at that before. It's been a while.
So I have some of my, if you go to my Stack Exchange profile and look at my answered questions on freelance, I've answered questions similar to this in the past, and that was when I was far closer to actually that being my day-to-day. But there's a couple things to consider. One is, I hate the whole you have to pay to be visible. I don't like that at all. Yeah. And I know eLance did more than that, like oDesk, and I love this part of too. This is going to turn into why Tim loved oDesk and hates eLance. And honestly, I know we have Twitter clamoring for me to tell the interview story. because you've seen people tweeting at you, right?
True.
And this does relate, but
we're kind of getting closer to that. Yeah,
we're getting close. But I think
where you interviewed yourself, right?
Yeah,
is that what the thing is?
Where I interviewed myself. I don't know that that's going to happen this week.
This is some internet myth that's going around about
something like
why
that.
Tim interviewed himself and what happened.
Just the time that I interviewed myself. And
okay.
It's an interesting story. Maybe we'll get to it later.
All right.
I don't think we'll get to it today.
I gotta prep that a little bit in my head. I gotta go back and remember some things. That's probably what you're thinking.
You remember the story, right? But one thing I loved about oDesk was you could only submit like I want to say like 10 in a week.
Yep.
Or something like that. Now eLance comes along. Now that's Upwork. I shouldn't.
Unless you pay, and then you can get more.
Well, that's exactly. Yeah. eLance comes along and says, or you could pay and do more. And that I like. Again, I hate that concept from this because to me the value add is for me to be able to manage clients easily and not have to worry about that side of the business. And because you've got plenty of tools out, there's plenty of make invoicing easy tools. And it's okay. You can make the invoicing as easy as possible, but I still have to remember to go in and create the invoice and figure out if I'm charging hourly, well, how many hours was it? Because I track them someplace. And maybe the invoicing tool has a time tracking tool, great, but I still probably have to go in and finalize it for the week and make sure I send it to the client. And I got to check to see if the client paid me. To me, the value of oDesk was I could log time in their client and then it paid me.
It was automatic.
That was it. I didn't finalize anything, didn't send anything in, and they guaranteed it. They would foot the bill if they got stiffed by the client. They just tell me to stop working after.
This is a big thing.
So for me, it's like 10%.
Yeah, and I've been stiffed by a few clients in the past.
10% to do all of that. Yeah. I just do the work, which is the value I bring to the table, right? Is to be able to, whatever it is that I'm doing. I do that. And the rest of it just happens automatically. Yeah, that's for sure worth 10%. But now as Upwork changes and there's like, the focus becomes, I think, more on the job marketplace. I would bring clients to oDesk. People would say, hey, can you do this job for me? I'm like, sure, sign up on oDesk because that's how I bill. I would, it wouldn't be, I wouldn't bill outside of oDesk, even though I could. And people would be like, oh, you'd save 10%. I didn't want to save that 10% because I didn't want the headache of it, right? So I would bring clients that would find me word of mouth to oDesk. Sign up for oDesk. That's how I'm going to bill you. So for me, the job marketplace wasn't the strong selling point.
You didn't use it as much because you didn't need it.
Right. Now I go out there and I get work there because what I'd say is, okay, there's new technology, or I want to try something in this space, or I want to try this problem. Let me go find jobs out there that are similar to stuff I already do. So they're going to be in the context that I work in. They're going to be PHP jobs, right? They're going to be using the language or the platform or whatever that I use. But they're going to touch on this API because I'd really like to learn something about this kind of API. I really like to work with this kind of API. So I'm going to find those type of jobs and I'm going to start bidding on them. And you're right. I mean, there'd be tons of bids, and it's sometimes hard to bring yourself to the top of that list, right? Because a lot of times I'd look and I could see the average. And it was nowhere near what my hourly rate was. Meaning it was very, very much lower. And I'd go in there and I'd just bust the average. And so, but then I'd still get the jobs. And that's the thing. That's
a nice angle to work. Well, because most of the people are bidding too, and these sites are from outside the US. Well, unless it's specified as only US, because I know it's when somebody posts a job, they can only accept applicants that are US based. But even are they really US based too? That's another thing.
Well, that is another question.
So just kidding. So I know you said you have a lot of tips on eLance or the Stack Overflow, the Stack Exchange.
Yeah, freelance. I think it's freelance.
So if you could give one or two tips for somebody pitching a job on it, what would be the one or two most important things that they should list in that picture? Which I know you probably said on the Stack Exchange at some point.
But I think I may have mentioned this in one of our podcasts. We've done so many, it's hard to keep track of. But I thought maybe we did, but maybe not.
We'll have to go back and look at the chapters. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll run the transcript, see if it's still there. The one piece of advice I'd give is to tell them how you're going to build it. Don't tell them that you can build it. Don't tell them that you've built things before. And this, unfortunately, I think I don't know how much it aligns with the students you're working with because they're more design than developer. But someone comes along with me a problem, I would say, well, we should do this. We should do this. Meaning, I'm trying to think of an abstract example, but I'd say, you've described what needs to happen. What we should do is build this table, put the data in that, and then when this happens, we'll call this API, and the response we get back from that will look like this, and that's what we will then change this data over here, and we'll use this service to alert the user. I just listed, this is how we're going to architect it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Because then the next conversation they have with the next developer, they're going to ask them, well, how would you do it? And they're going to use mine as the thing
qualifier
to be like, did they know that you should do this, this, and this?
Yeah.
Did they list that here's some issues that we might run into? And all of a sudden now I'm the spec document. And then at the end, well, why wouldn't you go with that person, right?
I like that. Tim's spec document, or Tim, the spec doc.
Here, well, let's bring it back, and now we'll go full circle.
That should be your new title.
But that was my best advice, because a lot of times people would be like, no, I don't want to tell them how I'm going to do it, because then they wouldn't hire me. Well, if they're not going to hire you, you don't want to work for that person, right? But the truth is, if they see that and they recognize, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, why wouldn't they be the person I'd hire? They've told me exactly. They obviously understand the problem I'm trying to solve, because they've told me how to solve it. And that's, I think, that the answer to that question I have, I think what I called it on freelance, is basically give away the secret. Tell them how it's going to work, because then you become what they define, anybody else by. And to bring it, back to the other side of my life, right? And you know this too. You look in the Old Testament, the story of Joseph. What does he tell Pharaoh? He says, I do this, 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 and this. He tells him how to solve his problem. And what does Pharaoh turn around and do? He goes,
Tim,
well,
for me, it's been a while.
How about we hire you? And that's the story. That's the story of Joseph. Joseph tells Pharaoh, these bad things are going to happen. Here's what I would do. Here's exactly, I would say, you do this, and you do this, and you do this. You take the grain, you store it. And he goes in his plan. He says, find a man to execute that plan. And Pharaoh goes, well, why don't we let you do it? And that's the same concept to how I approach bidding on contracting. It's like, tell them how it should work, because then they're going to be left saying, well, why don't we just hire the guy that knows how to build it?
Which I think that answer that you gave is really good, because I have a mix of students, that are both web development, which are more of a technical background, and they would be the type of jobs that you have experience with, they would be applying for. And then my design students, you're right, like it's like a little bit of a different view, where like if you're a design student, you have to have a portfolio, right? They have to see, even if it's just personal projects or student projects, they have to see that, right? You need to have, the levels are just going up here.
I know. I should probably realize this is Mark's making his point. We're going to bring the music up.
It's like the drama is just raising there. But with design students, you need something to visualize, especially if you're talking to a prospective client and they're asking you to design a logo. Well, you need to show some logos, right? They're not going to believe you can design a logo if you haven't done anything in that area, right?
And that's where it's a little different, because if the design is just, I need a logo for my business, then I guess it would be come in and say, well, based on what I know of your business, I think these are strong design elements that I would put in. I would use this type of, here's a color palette that communicates good with what I understand to be the context of your business, and give them that reason, not just, hey, I think this would look good, but why?
But I like how you laid it out, where like if a student can just say a former student or an entry-level programmer could talk about the process. That's honestly, when you go to a job interview, that's what those types of questions they ask you too. Like if you're given this problem, how would you solve it?
Oh yeah,
right?
Exactly.
They may not expect you to write every little bit of code to show you how to solve the problem, but they want to be comfortable with you talking through that process and talk through the problem. So that's interesting to kind of say, if you could do that in a very simple, approachable way, listing or kind of defining what the problem is, defining how you would provide some solutions to it, even if you don't know. And that actually helps people too. We're like, especially when you're first getting started, or even now when I'm starting a new project, I may not know how to actually write the exact code that I need to do within that project, but I know I have time to learn that. But at least I know, if I know what the big pieces are and how they fit together, then you can kind of work your way around that. So
yeah, it's just knowing what you're going to need to put together, ahead of time.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I will definitely relay that if I talk to my my web development or web design students. I think that's really good advice. Because, like I said, and we always talk about having a portfolio website, which we can talk about why you don't have a personal website. Which
I don't have a personal website.
Well, that was something that came up before.
It does. I mean, it's on my list.
Or is the need for a actually a good question for developers? Because I know for designers, if you're looking to get a job, you have to have a personal website. You have to have a portfolio website of some sort. It may not be a site that you host yourself. You may use Squarespace or Wix or Webflow or whatever service you want to use, so you don't have to worry about the code part of it. But you need to have some type of online presence. That's not just Instagram or, because it shows that you have your own identity.
Is that true though? So when you say this, not just Instagram, does that not cut it for a designer?
I'm not saying people don't get hired just having an Instagram account. They probably definitely do. But if I was looking for an applicant, that's what I always do. We've hired a lot of faculty at the school. I've looked at a lot of different resumes. If they don't have a personal website, I'd throw them out. That's one of the first things I do, because in a sense, I would
never be hired at Mark's school,
because it just shows that you have. Well, if you're looking in the process of looking for a job, just like right now, I don't if you go to my markhoblane.com, it's just markhoblane.com because it's built on sitebuild.io, which we talked about is still being built. That's still in process.
Does it say built on sitebuild.io? Because it should. It should.
But it's actually running on this.
Then underneath,
but the domain's pointing to the self-build.io application, which I'm like, I was trying to motivate me to build my website through this application, whatever. Anyway, whole separate project. But I'm not actually actively looking for a job right now, right? Maybe in a year or two, who knows? But if I would, then oh my gosh, yeah, I would definitely have.
Does anybody at the college watch this or listen to it? Just out of curiosity.
No. Well, they know. They know I'm crazy.
They know.
Yeah, they know I'm crazy. I got tenure too, so who cares?
It's even better.
Yeah, but I would definitely put that in place, right? And I tell my students too, before you go start putting your resume together, start sending places, make sure you have your own URL. And it does, like I said, it doesn't have to take that much work. You just have to go to one of these sites like Webflow, like I think you said you took a look at. As a possible solution to have a nice no code way, which I do believe is the future for these web builders, like not have to worry about the HTML and CSS and make it as easy as possible, but still make it as compatible as possible. So if you wanted to take your code to different places, you could do that. That's the issue I have with like Squarespace, Wix, and all these hosted because they're closed platforms. So once you build your website on there,
off of that,
it's a huge hassle. Even though they do have exporters. You can get it out, you can get your data out, but it's a mess. It's more work to honestly get it out and then bring it someplace else. Which that's actually, if you look on Upwork, there's a lot of job projects about that. Moving your site. Because I've looked at those
from Wix, huh?
And it's this site and projects I would hate to do, but there's a lot new. Going from, let's say, Shopify to WordPress, going from Squarespace to WordPress. There's a lot of different back and forth, like
everything to WordPress. Pretty
much. If you like that type of migration projects, there's a lot of projects out there like that. I don't think they pay that well, but
everybody's going to WordPress.
It's something to look at.
Well, that actually though, there's a good service concept too. If you have some more, entrepreneurial minded developers in your class.
Maybe. But not for me. That sounds like
figure it. No, not you. No. But just figure out how can you automate the Wix to WordPress, the Shopify to WordPress. Because if you can do that, there's plenty of
it would definitely. Well, the thing is, you're dependent upon the exporters and the importers. So you basically would be you have to take the data that's coming out of Squarespace in that format, and then be able to then convert that to the format that's let's say you're moving to WordPress, your own WordPress site, in a format that could easily create a WordPress theme or WordPress site from that. You could script that, but then you're also dependent upon the spec, right? So if they change how they export out the data, then you need to be watching that and following that. So your importer that you're writing for is going to be accounting for that, which that could be, that's a huge dependency and huge pain. So it doesn't sound like a good business idea to me.
I think you could make money out of it though.
But do you think
you would have to maintain it? That's for sure.
Going back to the idea for developers needing a personal website. Do you think it's really even a priority nowadays?
It depends. It depends. Like for me, I've been able to get a lot of my jobs because, and I feel like we touched on this 3 podcasts ago, we were talking about interviewing. A lot of my jobs come from word of mouth, people knowing that I have the domain expertise in a particular area. He really knows how to work with telco APIs. So we're building this, or we need to enhance this. So he's a good choice to hire. Or, word of mouth. This person did this for me, and you're trying to do some type of API integration. Yeah. So from that, no, not in that case. But when you're talking about students who don't have that, you know, existing reputation or a specialty in some in some, you know, vertical or concept or technology or whatever it is, then yeah, I guess, you know, you need to be able to point somebody to something. I mean, right now you just go to my domain, it takes you to my Twitter profile.
Even if that website's just a single page simplified version of your resume,
I mean,
that's at least something, right? That's why I tell them, at least have a one page that's about you. It looks professional, lists your experience, your knowledge, do it in an interesting way, and that somebody would be, you know, when they take a look at it, they'll be able to have like a positive view of you. I think that's all you need. You don't need like a huge blog and be posting every week, or, you know, because that's also where I kind of fell apart too. Like my websites in the past were like just the need of like, okay, do I have something to blog about and talk about? I'd rather start a podcast with you because that's what I'm doing now. It's very easy. But to write content each week, it takes a good amount of work, right? To do in such a way
if you
that
have weight that for your website to be useful, you have to be
takes a lot of work.
adding content to it. That's a lot of weight.
Which I'd rather be coding an application. That's one thing about, like, that's why doing doing some like recording of my processes while I'm building applications, then maybe posting that to like YouTube. That actually is more interesting to me rather than doing a website like blog posts. Just, I don't know, because for me, it kind of maybe would fit my style a little bit better. But for somebody who likes to write, and when they're coding their project or whatever, and they want to document the process, I think that's very, very valuable, because if you do a lot of searches when you're trying to work through a problem, most often you find developer websites who solve the problem, how they solved it. So, and a lot of times it's a single developer, it's their blog, and they're talking about that's very valuable.
Working
it's
on.
Huge. Yeah.
Which, if it's the same stack that you're using, you know, if it's a Gatsby, you know, a Gatsby static site generator, and this is how they were able to parse XML or something like that, then for sure, then you find a lot of information because they've documented that whole process. But no, I mean, like, I don't have a personal site right now. Like, what I wanted, you know, I want to put something there because from a career standpoint, I'm not looking for new clients right now, so I don't need it for that. But I, you know, back before there weren't really conferences in person for the past 2 years, right? But I used to speak at a decent amount of conferences, doing the DevRel stuff in a past gig. I want a site up there to put, because in various places I have my talk descriptions. They're in different conference websites, and there's you know, maybe you can watch the video, maybe you can see how it was rated.
Yeah, you should probably archive that stuff too. Like download.
I want to put it in one place,
then make sure you have it for permanently stored on your own server, so you don't, because, you know, stuff goes offline all the time. So.
Right, and it's not like there's a video of every talk, but just having the abstract there and be like, hey, this talk on this topic, I gave it at these conferences. Here's links to maybe a video, maybe it's online, maybe it's not anymore, but it was, you know, someplace having that index where, oh, this is where this talk was given. So if you heard my talk and you're like, I remember it was a talk about, you know, something about hypermedia, and you can go to my site, see that talk, see, you know, where it was given, and then maybe you can get the slides, because you just want to go back through the slides and get some information that was in the slides or something like that. But you know, the other side is, for me, is I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this. It seems like there's companies and groups that might want someone to come in and speak on some of these topics, and that's an easy way for me to say, hey, I've done it before for conferences, and I can do a decent remote presentation if, you know, you don't want to foot the bill to get somebody to travel out, but talk on this topic that I'm knowledgeable about. And that's where, for sure, that's why I want another, you know, that's why I will need to put up a personal site. That's why it's on my to-do list, is to be able to kind of venture a little bit in that direction. So
you're looking to get back on the speaker circuit, huh?
Not so much in the circuit as much as I really think I think there is opportunity out there where people want to hear, you know, or people want the content for their closed group, right?
Just for doing that. Yes, I don't think that's a big thing, because, like, you know, if I wasn't teaching full time, and being in academia, one of the jobs that I thought about, I kind of would be good, I would enjoy doing, even though it would involve some traveling, and that would be a thing, would be going into companies and doing kind of on-site consulting, on-site training for like a week or 2 weeks. And then just doing, but now, since everybody's online remote, is it really need to go do a lot of traveling? So that is something also I'm thinking about.
And I will
for what you're talking about, for making a personal website, documenting your experience in the projects and your past speaking engagements and showing videos to what you've done in the past. For somebody who wants to do something like that, that's why, like I said, if I was kind of approaching that and wanted to start getting some clients in that area, yeah, I would have to start putting together some presentations or lectures that would be up certain topics that I think would be appealing for that market, and then put that on a website for myself. Try to market myself.
There's some startups that I've not leveraged that make it really easy to say, oh, you want to book this person for an hour? This is what it costs. You just, you fill the payment out here, and then we facilitate the video connection, right?
Yeah.
And with the new now with how many of these events are going online, how to phrase this?
There's that timer again.
I know, right? I'm out of time, and we're out of time, folks. And there it is. There it is. Oh, it wasn't our timer. It was a different timer. My bad. We still have time. Look at that. This is going to sound really dumb considering about how I had failed to hit recording, have had so much background noise and all that. But let me set this up. Being able to give a good talk at a conference live, there's a smaller set of people than there are that are just good developers that are knowledgeable about said topics, right? So you have developers that really know what they're doing and are good in a particular topic. Then there's a smaller set that can communicate it well. Yeah,
communication is key.
Communicate it well in person. And then there's an even smaller set that can communicate it well virtually, right? Because when there's not people out there doing the same level of energy to just this little camera right there, and you don't see the other people, because a lot of times when you're doing a virtual presentation, it's not like a Zoom call where you see everybody. A lot of times it's like you don't see anybody because you're sharing a screen and you're walking through that, and maybe like with the OBS stuff, maybe you're in the corner. That's an even smaller set. So now we're getting to really specialized skills, and if you can do that, making it more known that you can do that and possess that set of skills and can verify this is where you're going, like right with the site. If there's a way that you can say, hey, look, I gave this talk at this virtual conference, and here's what people that watched it said, and they were positive comments, and that builds this reputation of, oh, he's not just saying he can do it, but he actually, people liked the talk that he gave virtually, build that confidence. Yeah, there's definitely the use for, going back to your question, do developers need their personal site? It depends. It depends on what they're trying to achieve. But certainly for like the goals that I have for my career looking forward, I need one. I don't have one. I need to build it, which is why I poked around at Webflow a little bit.
Oh, what do you think about Webflow?
Well, the thing that I want it to do is put together more of the template that I want that then I can pull out and use a static site generator to generate the actual content.
Yeah, I think if you pay for 1 month, I'm thinking, because the export, I don't think it's available for the free version.
Yeah, I haven't even dug that far.
Which maybe I should do, just pay, because I am curious about that myself. Because the one thing I don't like about, I talked about the Squarespace and the Workspace are closed systems. Webflow, even their whole goal is to get you in there using their editor, and then you're going to host that website or web application on their platform. But they do have the upsell saying, oh, well, you could just move your site anywhere, right? You could download the HTML, the CSS, host it anywhere. I am curious about what that looks like. Is the HTML, CSS, is it a mess? When you finally get it, is it hard to rework? Do you have everything that if you wanted to modify the theme, or, I'm sure you can modify the content, it's just HTML, but if you wanted to, how hard is that process after you get that data out? I would be curious about that.
Yeah. And like when I first went into it, like knowing zero about Webflow, I was like, oh, this is like a way for me to generate HTML. But then I realized, no, it's not. They want to host it for me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of I wasn't aware of that when I first started. So, well, yeah, I'll have to dig around more. There seemed like there was an open source Webflow-like thing.
Well, there is. I told you about the GrapeJS editor.
Is that what it is?
That's what I'm looking at for integrating with my sitebuild.io.
Sitebuild.io
coming in the future.
Not a sponsor yet of this podcast,
because it is open source. It's not a large open source project, but I did. If you compare it, also the interface. I don't think Webflow markets the fact they use GrapeJS, but you can tell it totally is. It is open source project, and then GrapeJS, the group around it who created the project, they have their own hosting service that's how they make their money. So they kind of say, okay, here's this open source project. You can use it, download whatever you want to do. It's, I don't think it's MIT license or something like that, but so it's totally free, totally open. But then if you're interested in a hosted solution using this editor that we have give as an open source, then we have that. So, which I know at GrapeJS, because I've seen the code come out of that. That's very clean. So that's why I do like that. That's why I'm thinking Webflow, the code coming out may not be that bad, but I know they use their own storage solution for storing the data. I'm not sure how that then gets displayed in the template. If we would take all the data out of the database, output that out as HTML and just HTML files, I'm not sure how that would look. But if you just do a simple one page and then you could just click on the little HTML button, you see the full HTML, see the full CSS, and it actually looks pretty clean. So they've done a pretty good job about that. So it's a nice visual editor through the browser, and it does a pretty good job producing the HTML for it.
So that's what, I'll have to probably play with that then too, because that's what I'm after is
you could just
I don't like going in and doing CSS and HTML. If you understand it, but
you do have to have it. Like you could just do it locally. Just go to GrapeJS, download it. You do have to. It is like a Node project, so you just start up as a Node application, and you use their template that they have already set up, where you just instantiate the application in a web page. And then you could just use that like that. It's not, if you want to connect it to any type of storage, it doesn't have that by default, but it has a way for you to hook into like a NoSQL store to store the data, but it's really just the front end.
So just run that, and then basically it'll give me the HTML output. Be like, this is what it looks like, and then I can go and take that and templatize that however I need for my.
That's also the thing I'm working on. I would love to use that for my students because I think it's a really great editor, and it's more that no code approach, which I believe that's where the web's going, especially for designers. And I think that if I could give like an instance of that in an easy way, because I can't expect the students to go through the process of installing, running up locally on the server, but if I could at least have it running, let's say on a server in our art department, and then be able to give them a URL to it. And as long as they know that, okay, and if we're not going to do the work to hook it up to someplace to store the files, but at least if they have a way to click on the HTML and download it and save it locally to their computer, that might be a way, it might be a nice editor to introduce.
So does it have a different format that it keeps your design in, that then it exports to HTML? Like, is there a different non-HTML, like non-mark, what am I trying to say? It's like, do they have source files that are not HTML? Or if you gave it what it exported back, would it be like, oh, edit it just like it was before?
No, it's just HTML and CSS.
Okay, so they don't have any intermediate format that then they are transforming into the rendered HTML. No,
you could just take their HTML. Like if you click on the view source, I think it's view source or HTML button in the interface. Then you see the code, and then the intention is that if you want to hook this up to your own storage solution, you could just store the raw HTML, raw CSS like data in there, and then you could always bring it back or export it out.
And you just bring it back into Grape and see like, now edit this HTML.
Yeah, that's
all good to go. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, like I don't know what your students have running on their computers, but you set
like I talked about. Well, like I talked about, I use Replit, which they loved the online editing. It was very accessible for getting into a project and working with it. But then getting that, even the students had an issue just of getting that code, which even though they have a simple downloads as zip button, just getting them to understand that, to saying, okay, if you want to then take this code, put it on your computer so you can open up in a browser off your computer, just translating that was even just a challenge.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps.
Well, this was a pause when we're getting to the end of the podcast.
Well, because I see the time here, we only have about like a minute left. So hopefully,
no, we have two minutes left.
Okay, the timer on the live thing always kind of screws me up.
Yes, the time, because we go live a minute before, but now we can spend a minute talking about that, and then we will only have a minute left.
There's nothing more that I like a podcast talking about how we're actually producing the podcast. I like that.
Yeah, like in the podcast itself.
Yeah, why not?
The actual live production. This has been one of the best, I think, because we've had background music, we've had timers, we've had me not hitting record at the start. So much flavor that's been added to this podcast, like sprinkled to top. I am hoping. I'm hoping it recorded fine too, because I'm testing, and I don't want to say it's a new recording, but I'm running this off of a new computer. I just got a Surface Studio.
Oh, okay.
So because I am a content creator.
Oh, we should have talked about that.
And that is,
we'll have to add that to the list, the Google Doc.
Content creation. So
I don't know about that yet.
Yeah, so I've had a Surface Pro 6 for years, 2-3 years or something like this. It's worked well to workflow. I get in the studio because I want a little bit more power for doing some things. And we can talk about that next week because we have a minute left. Mark, anything you want to tell people to do? Maybe go to devfridayshow.com.
It's not develop, it's devfridayshow.com. That's right.
I don't even know where our podcast is. Go to devfridayshow.com.
Or just go to your favorite podcast app. We're on all the places to download. It should be in all the places by now. So
we're in iTunes.
Except for we're not. Does Spotify use I don't know. We should try to test that. I don't know if they're on Spotify
live or something.
They have their own system, which I don't like.
Really?
Whatever.
Are we going to ever get to Spotify?
Probably we'll have to. It's kind of like how I drag my feet to get on iTunes, but it's one of those things you have to do.
All righty. Well, it's, join us maybe next week. We don't know when we'll be live.
Oh, we'll be on. Oh, next week, definitely. I'm going to be on you. We're going to figure out some day next week.
All right.
We got to do a little remote.
See you then.
All right.